Hey everybody, how you doing? So before we get into episode 3, I want to just cover one thing. So in the previous episode 2, I showed you a piece of 8-track tape that I found inside the radio. John from Arkansas must have thought that
I'm crazy.
But then again, what do I know? I'm just some young guy from Jacksonville. Matter of fact,
What you got cooking? I'm about cooking something up with me.
anyway, let's get into our episode here. We've made some really good progress. We've got some good stuff to show you guys here. So stay tuned. Good stuff coming up. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 3 of our Motorola T6SMS 1966 Ford Thunderbird radio. And we are digging in the caps here now. So first thing I want to show you, this is the AM radio section right here. Okay? And this is a multi-section cap. It's a 500 microfarad at 16 volts, and I believe it's a 3 or 4 section cap. I don't really know yet. So I want to tackle that first. Now, first I thought this was going to be really difficult, but actually it's really not. There's a side plate on this radio right here, which comes off. Let's move this back a little bit. Comes off with, let's see, 5 screws. So there's 2 right here, there's 2 in the back, and there's 1 here in the center. And when you take that off, it lifts out, and this board becomes accessible. Okay? So the only thing that's holding me now from pulling this board out is this audio wire right here, this black wire, and there's a green wire here. So if I flip it on the other side, there's also a ground wire right here, which is stopping me from pulling this board out. So the plan's going to be, let's remove this ground wire right here. Let's zoom in so you can see it. Right there. There's the ground. So we're going to remove that off the chassis. We're going to remove this black wire, which we're going to pull back and show you. And I should be able to pull this board out. Then I have to figure out if I can restuff this can or if I have to do something different. I don't really know how many sections it is. I suppose I can look in the book, but that's no fun. So we're going to get this out. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, on this side of the radio, we've actually made some good progress. So we've replaced the motor control board cap. This is a 2000 microfarad at 16 volts. I actually put in a 22. So I've got that in there. Over here on this board, you'll see right here that I've replaced the 2 caps that we've taken out. So they're there. And I've also replaced the 2 caps here, which are more in the power section. There's a 500 and a 1000. So I put in a 1000 and a 470, best I could do. So these caps are all done. This cap is done. I did use the pigtail method on every one of these. So rather than try to mess with the board, I pigtailed the ends, cleaned my connections, made a nice mechanical connection, soldered them, they're fine. One of the things I have to think about when I do this radio is I have to consider that it's going to be in a car and it's going to bounce around. So I have to make sure that all of the connections that I'm making are not only secure, but that there's no room for them to move, which means insulating things, for example. So I have to be really careful about that because, you know, this stuff is going to move around a little bit when you hit bumps, right? So that's the plan there. So I am going to get to work on this AM radio board. And this is the whole thing right here. That's the whole radio, I believe. And we're going to test these transistors. We're going to remove it. We're going to replace that cap. And that should be the last cap that I have to do in here, I believe, unless I can find some more. And at first glance, I'm able to see a piece of it here. Let me tell you how many sections this thing is. Looks like it's only a 2-section cap. So replacing this thing with 2 500 or 470s is going to work just fine. So let me get to that and we'll come back. Okay, well after some delicate surgery, we have our capacitor out. A little too much glare. So it is a 2-part cap, 500 microfarads, 16 volts, working voltage. You can see there's 2 leads here, and then there's 3 tie downs to the board. And we were able to get it off of this board here without any damage, which is good. Now we're going to take the opportunity to test the rest of the components on this board, and we're going to figure out what we're going to do with this. Don't know if I'm going to put this back in. You know, a 500 microfarad cap is pretty small. I can fit it inside here. I don't know if I want to go through that effort though. I'm not sure yet. If you look really close here, you could see that it's bulged at the top and there's something leaking out. So this cap is definitely bad. So let me think about what I want to do with this and I'll come back to you. Being the adventurous type, I've decided to take it apart. So first thing that comes off is this metal ring. This is what holds it down to the board. And then there's this insulator cap right here. And there's a whole bunch of other insulators underneath it. And then it comes out like this. So now, if I clean this out well enough, I should be able to remount it with the capacitors inside. Let's take a look at our 470s. We'll pull out a couple of 470s here. And you'll see that they're small. Right? These are 470s at 16 volts. I can easily fit these inside here, like this. So I think that's what we're going to do for integrity, is we're going to clean this out and we're going to restuff this can. Why not? You only live once. And I'll be able to close it up, and hopefully we'll put it back together. So I'll show you what that looks like when it's done. By the way, here's the original bottom plate. This is the plate that actually solders to the board right here. These are the pins. So we're going to save that because we should be able to attach our capacitors to these little tabs here. Right here and right here. And then we just have to build a ground and we'll be okay. We'll be in good shape. So that's the plan. This is going to sit on top of this can after we restuff it like this. Okay? Let me get to it. Okay, here's our invention so far. So we've got the two caps mounted to pins, which come out here on this end, and the two grounds are right here, are tied together and come out the bottom. So we're going to try to mount this in the can and see if it works. Be right back. Okay, the final verdict is in. I decided just to mount the caps on the board. I was going to put this can back in, and I don't like the way it looks. It looks like crap. There's no reason to have it in there. The only reason why it's there is because when they made this radio, this is what a 500 microfarad cap looked like, which is about 4 times as big as those. So that's the only reason why they had to put a can in there. These two mount in really easy. It's done, it's clean, it's neat, there's plenty of room and clearance. So all we did was we just mounted our caps on the board and we're good to go. And this way, if you have to service them in the future, it's real simple to get it out. So that's the way that works. I'm going to test the resistors in here while I have this out. And this is our radio section, so we want to make sure this is good. And we'll test the resistors and make sure everything's great, and then we'll come back and let you know where we land. So we shall return. You know, one other thing I want to cover here, in this hobby, there's two ways that you can look at the work that you do. You can go for originality or functionality. In the case of this radio, yeah, it's old, like me, but I'm not looking to restore it back to original, what it looked like originally, meaning components and everything. I'm looking to make it work and make it work well. That's the objective here, is that this will be worked. It'll work well. We'll sell it to someone that needs it for their car. We'll make money for St. Jude's Children's Hospital. And I'm really going for working here, right? Now, I'm not going to screw around with it and change the design. So I'm going to put the right components in there, but I'm not going to go through all the pain of trying to get a can like this back together. It really serves no purpose. No one's ever going to go in here, right? This is not something that you're going to find, you know, in an antique store somewhere. So I just want to make sure I cover the difference between functionality and originality. So I'm going for functionality here, right? Optimal performance. Be back. All right, folks, we put everything back together here. All the capacitors have been replaced, every one of them. And there's even a 0.5 microfarad electrolytic cap that I had to replace in there. I never saw one that small, but it was bad. It certainly wasn't the right value. So we've replaced all the boards now. We've got the AM radio board here. This is the one we took out. We've got our preamp underneath mounted, and we have a free bird for sale. I think he'd go great inside of a Thunderbird. So we're going to do our first power up here. Let me explain how we've got it connected. So from a power perspective, let's move this over here. we know that our power for the radio is the black wire. We know that. The blue wire is for the light, right? That goes to the instrument cluster. So we have the positive end of our DC power supply connected to the black wire. We have the negative side of our DC power supply connected to the chassis of the radio. From a speaker perspective, obviously we have one side going white, orange, and then the purple one is common to both speakers. So let's turn on our power supply. Make sure this knob is in right. Okay. There we go. Alright, we're going to turn on our DC power supply, and we have it set for, let's see if I can get this down here so you can see it. There may be too much glare. 12.6 volts. That's about what we need for this radio. Okay, here goes nothing. Let's pull the shot back, just in case. If we see smoke, we see it together. And I also have an antenna connected to this thing as well. Let's turn it on. I heard something out of the speaker. We got some noise. Let's see if we get any stations. Now keep in mind, I haven't done any alignments. Whoa.
General Manager Bob Quinn yesterday.
That's ESPN radio.
Of underperforming, essentially under 500. So now what happens with the Detroit Lions? This is game day.
There's our tone control.
Tell your smart speaker to play ESPN. We're presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests appear via the Shell Pennzoil
Let's check our
Performance Line.
balance.
Jay Cornett and Jordan Cornett here with you.
That's
and
one.
Jay and I have been, I feel like, on
There's the
radio a lot over the next few days.
So this thing's working,
and
guys.
We watched, obviously, this game
Let me reset
together
up the shot. I want to
at
test
home.
the 8-track
together.
here.
We're married.
Okay, we have our radio playing. I have a replacement belt that I put in there. It's not exactly the right one, but we're going to see if it's enough power to turn this track, this 8-track. We're going to put this one in there, see what happens. I know the motor turns. I tested that.
No head coach, they have no general manager.
Let's see what happens. Check it out. That 8-track mechanism needs to be cleaned. It's dragging a little bit. But it's probably running because of that cap right there, that light blue cap. That's our motor control. So there's a capacitor that connects to a power transistor right there. And that sets the speed of our motor. Let's take this out. Okay, radio should come back on.
Close games. But his creativity, the offensive mastermind he is, and how him and Teddy Bridgewater...
These pots are dirty, I can tell.
Working now, Teddy being on the sidelines some of the time, and also
I have to clean that. I usually
out
go
as
to
much
the
as he
oxide
has.
for that.
And yet still this team, look, it's not one of the best in the NFL, but they've still surprised, and they've been very competitive. He has inexperience as a head coach.
Tune up the dial.
In our newscast, reflect the...
That they're trying to meet...
Very good.
Hope Chapel Ministries broadcast every Sunday at 2 p.m. with Dr. Jeanette C. Holmes Band.
All right, let's turn this off. And I want to kind of, I guess, wrap up this video because we're going to leave it right here, and I'll explain why in a moment. So let's turn this off, and we'll be right back. In our next episode, we're going to pay special attention to a couple things in this unit. Well, first of all, we're going to pay special attention to the 8-track player. As you heard, its speed is not well. There's a speed issue. The belt that I have in there is really not that good, but there is a new belt on the way. And we're going to clean everything up in there, clean the heads, that kind of thing. We're also going to be doing some measurements of power. I want to see if we're actually on the mark. We should be, because we replaced all the electrolytic caps in this thing. And I also did replace a few resistors that I found bad in the radio section. But all in all, I think from a resistor perspective, we're in really, really good shape here. So in our next episode, we're going to cover all that stuff. So until then, I'll leave you with this.
What's the word, Thunderbird?
Thunderbird.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. Take care, folks. See ya.